They found Marcus Reaper Kane slumped over his desk at 3 in the morning, one hand still gripping a pen, the other resting on a sealed envelope with a single word written across it: Isabella, the president of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club. The man who'd ruled the highways of the Southwest for 15 years with an iron fist and unshakable loyalty was gone. But he hadn't left quietly. He'd left words that would change everything his brothers thought they knew about him. Words that would reveal a secret he'd carried alone, buried so deep that even his VP never suspected. Inside that envelope was a letter to a daughter he'd never met. A daughter who was only 3 days old. A daughter whose existence had remained hidden from every member of his club, from every brother who'd sworn to ride or die beside him. The question wasn't why he'd written the letter. The question was why he'd kept her a secret at all, and what that secret had cost him in the end. Because Marcus Kane didn't die of natural causes. He died making a choice. The kind of choice that separates men from legends. The kind of choice that proves honor isn't just about loyalty to your brothers. Sometimes it's about loyalty to something bigger, something more vulnerable, something that can't fight for itself. This is the story of that choice, and the road that led him there. To understand Marcus Kane, you had to understand what the Iron Wolves meant to him. He didn't just lead the club. He'd built it from nothing. Back when he was 23, angry at the world, fresh out of the military with scars that wouldn't heal and a rage he couldn't contain, Marcus found salvation on 2 wheels. He found brothers who didn't ask questions about the nightmares that woke him screaming. Men who'd seen their own darkness and didn't judge his. The Iron Wolves weren't criminals. They weren't angels either. They existed in that gray space where the law didn't always reach, where justice was something you made with your own hands. They protected their territory, their families, their own. They had a code, simple but absolute. Loyalty above all, honor in action, respect earned through blood. Marcus embodied that code. He was 6'3" of muscle and conviction, with eyes that could read a man's soul in seconds. He wore his president patch like a badge of honor, and his brothers would have followed him straight into hell without hesitation. But there was something else about Marcus, something that made him different from other club presidents. He had rules about violence, lines he wouldn't cross. He believed in proportional response, in giving men a chance to make things right before bringing down the hammer. Some called it weakness. Marcus called it having a conscience. His VP, a scarred veteran named Tommy Brick Morrison, used to argue with him about it. "You're too soft sometimes." "Reaper," Brick would say, using Marcus's road name, "these streets don't respect mercy." And Marcus would respond, his voice steady as stone, "There's a difference between mercy and murder, brother. We enforce justice. We don't become the animals we're fighting." That philosophy had kept the Iron Wolves respected rather than feared. It had kept them out of the worst kinds of trouble, but it had also made enemies, men who saw Marcus's restraint as vulnerability, men who were about to test just how far that restraint extended. Her name was Elena Santos, and Marcus met her in the most unlikely place, a hospital waiting room. It was 2 years before the letter. Marcus had been visiting one of his brothers, who'd been in a crash. Elena was there for her grandfather. They'd both been exhausted, worried, running on coffee and fear. They'd started talking the way strangers do when they're both trying to forget where they are. Elena was different from the women who usually hung around the clubhouse. She was a nurse, soft-spoken but fierce, with eyes that saw through his leather and patches to the man underneath. She didn't care about his reputation, didn't care about the Iron Wolves. She saw Marcus, not Reaper, and for the first time in his life, Marcus wanted to be seen. Their relationship was secret from the start, not because Marcus was ashamed, because he understood the danger. Being close to a club president made you a target. Elena would have become leverage, a weakness his enemies could exploit. He'd seen it happen before, good women caught in the crossfire of club politics, so they kept it quiet, separate. Elena had her life, her work at the hospital. Marcus had his club, his brothers, his responsibilities. They'd steal moments together, late nights in her apartment, early mornings before the world woke up. She never asked him to choose, never demanded more than he could give. "I know who you are," she told him once, her fingers tracing the scars on his chest. "I know what your life is. I'm not trying to change it. But life has a way of forcing choices we never wanted to make." When Elena told Marcus she was pregnant, everything shifted. He remembered that conversation like it was burned into his brain, the fear in her eyes, mixed with hope. The way her hand trembled when she placed it on her stomach. "I'm keeping the baby," she said firmly. "But I need to know, Marcus. Are you in or out? Because I won't raise a child in your world. I won't have my daughter wondering if her father's coming home in a casket." Marcus had never felt fear like that. Not in combat. Not in a dozen club wars. This was different. This was the terror of wanting something so desperately and knowing you might not deserve it. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Elena's answer was simple. Be her father. Not her club president. Not Reaper. Just Marcus. But you can't be both. You have to choose. Marcus spent 9 months trying to figure out how to do the impossible. He couldn't just walk away from the Iron Wolves. The club wasn't a job you quit. It was family. Blood. Men who'd taken bullets for him, who'd trusted him with their lives and their families. Leaving meant betraying everything he'd built, everyone who'd believed in him. But staying meant losing Eleanor and his daughter. It meant being an absent father, a shadow in his child's life. It meant putting them in danger every single day. So Marcus made a plan, a way to have both, at least for a while. He'd step down as president gradually, groom Brick to take over, transition out over the next 2 years. He'd move to the edges of club life, become an advisor rather than a leader. It wasn't perfect, but it was a path. He never told his brothers about Elena or the baby. He convinced himself it was for their protection. In truth, he was afraid. Afraid his brothers wouldn't understand. Afraid they'd see it as abandonment. Elena gave birth to Isabella on a Tuesday morning in April. Marcus was there, holding her hand, watching his daughter come into the world. And in that moment, covered in tears and wonder, he knew. He knew he'd do anything to protect this tiny, perfect person. Anything. "She has your eyes," Elena whispered. Marcus could barely speak. "She's beautiful." "You're both beautiful." He stayed for 3 days. 3 perfect days, where he was just Marcus, just a father, marveling at his daughter's tiny fingers and the way she fit perfectly in his arms. Elena would catch him staring at Isabella with this expression of absolute awe. "You're good at this," she said. "Better than you thought you'd be." "I want to be here," Marcus said. "For all of it." "First words, first steps, all of it. Then make it happen," Elena said gently. "Talk to your brothers. Tell them the truth." But before Marcus could figure out how to do that, the choice was made for him. In the worst way possible. His name was Viktor Sokolov, and he ran a trafficking operation that moved through Iron Wolves territory. Marcus had been tracking him for months. The Iron Wolves had a strict rule. They didn't tolerate human trafficking. Not drugs, not weapons, but people. Women and kids being moved like cargo. That was a line Marcus wouldn't let anyone cross in his territory. Sokolov had been careful. Too careful. Every time Marcus got close, the operation shifted, disappeared. It was clear Sokolov had information, someone feeding him intel about the Iron Wolves' movements. Then 4 days after Isabella was born, Marcus got a message. A video sent to his burner phone. It showed Elena's apartment building. Showed Elena walking to her car, carrying Isabella in a car seat. The message was clear even without words. "We know about them." Marcus's blood turned to ice. The video was followed by a text. "You have something I want. Territory. I suggest we negotiate. Or your nurse and that baby might have an accident." Marcus didn't sleep that night. He rode for hours, trying to clear his head, trying to think. Sokolov had found his weakness. Found the one thing that could make the president of the Iron Wolves bend. He could tell his brothers. Call in the... So he did. He told her everything. About Sokolov, about the threat, about the impossible choice in front of him. Elena listened without interrupting, her face growing paler with each word. When he finished, she was silent for a long time. "You can't negotiate with him," she finally said. You know that, right? Men like that, they never stop. You give them an inch, they take everything. And then they take more. I know, Marcus said. But if I go after him, if I tell the club, you two become permanent targets. Every enemy I have will know about you. Elena looked down at Isabella, her expression fierce and tender at once. My daughter isn't going to grow up in a world where monsters like him win because good men were too afraid to fight. That's not the father I want her to have. Marcus felt something break open in his chest. Elena, no, she said firmly. Listen to me. You've been trying to protect us by keeping us secret. But secrets don't protect anyone. They just isolate you. Let your brothers help. Tell them the truth. Trust them the way they trust you. What if they can't protect you? What if something happens, then something happens, Elena said. But at least we'll have lived honestly. At least Isabella will know her father was a man who stood up for what was right, even when it was terrifying. That's the only protection that matters. In that moment, Marcus understood. He'd been so focused on keeping his two worlds separate that he'd forgotten the most important truth. Half measures don't protect anyone. You can't fight darkness from the shadows. Sometimes you have to step into the light and trust others to stand with you. The next morning, Marcus called a full church meeting. Every patched member of the Iron Wolves gathered in their clubhouse. They'd seen their president serious before, but never like this. Never with this weight on his shoulders. Brothers, Marcus began, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you months ago. He told them everything. About Elena, about Isabella, about the threat from Sokolov. He laid it all bare, every secret, every fear, every moment of doubt. His voice never wavered, but his hands shook slightly as he showed them the video on his phone. The silence when he finished was deafening. Then Brick stood up. His face was unreadable. You kept this from us? For 9 months? I did, Marcus said. I was trying to protect them. I was wrong. Tim, right, you were wrong, Brick said, his voice rising. We're your brothers. You think we wouldn't protect your family? You think we wouldn't die for that little girl? Other voices joined in, angry, hurt. Marcus had expected this. He'd violated their trust, kept them in the dark about something fundamental. He stood there and took it, every accusation, every harsh word. Then Brick did something unexpected. He walked up to Marcus and pulled him into a hard embrace. You're an idiot, he said roughly. But you're our idiot, and nobody threatens an Iron Wolves family, nobody. One by one, the other brothers came forward, clapped Marcus on the shoulder, promised protection, swore oaths. The anger was real, but so was the loyalty. So was the love. So what's the play? Asked Snake, the club's sergeant-at-arms. How do we end this Sokolov piece of garbage? Marcus had been thinking about that all night. We can't just kill him. He's got people, layers of protection. We go after him directly, it's war. And in a war, innocents get hurt. Then what? Brick asked. We make him come to us, Marcus said. We use what he wants most, our territory. We offer him a meeting. Tell him we're willing to negotiate access. But we control the location, the timing, everything. We turn his own trap against him. It was risky. It meant putting Marcus in the crosshairs. But it was the best chance. They had to end this without endless bloodshed. And Elena and the baby? Snake asked. Safe house, Brick said immediately. We've got that place up in the mountains. 24-hour security. Nobody gets within a mile of them until this is over. Marcus felt a weight lift from his chest. He wasn't alone anymore. His brothers had his back, the way it should have been from the start. The meeting with Sokolov was set for 3 days later. An abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, neutral ground. Marcus would go in with just Brick and Snake. Show of good faith. The rest of the Iron Wolves would be positioned around the perimeter, hidden but ready. Those 3 days felt like an eternity. Marcus spent every moment he could at the safe house with Elena and Isabella. He held his daughter constantly, memorizing her face, her smell, the tiny sounds she made. Elena watched him with sad, knowing eyes. You're going to be fine, she said. You're coming back to us. I know, Marcus said. But they both heard the uncertainty in his voice. On the second night, Marcus wrote the letter. He didn't tell Elena. He waited until she was asleep, then sat at the small desk in the safe house bedroom and put pen to paper. He wrote to Isabella. Told her about the man he'd been before she was born, the mistakes he'd made, the blood on his hands, the darkness he'd carried. He told her about the Iron Wolves, about what brotherhood meant, about the code he'd tried to live by, but mostly he wrote about her mother, about Elena's courage, her compassion, her refusal to accept anything less than honesty. He told Isabella that if anything happened to him, she should know that he'd made his choice, that he'd chosen her, that every father should be so lucky as to have a reason to be a better man. "You've given me something I never thought I'd have," he wrote, "a future worth fighting for, a reason to believe that maybe there's more to life than just surviving. I hope I get to watch you grow up. I hope I get to be the father you deserve. But if I don't, I want you to know you saved me, you and your mother. You saved me from becoming something I couldn't live with." He sealed the letter in an envelope, wrote Isabella on the front, left it in the desk drawer, hidden but findable, just in case. The warehouse was exactly as grim as Marcus expected. Cold concrete, broken windows, the smell of rust and decay. Sokolov was already there when Marcus, Brick, and Snake arrived, flanked by 6 men with weapons barely concealed. Viktor Sokolov was smaller than Marcus imagined, thin, sharp-featured, with the eyes of a predator. He smiled when Marcus walked in, a smile that didn't reach those cold eyes. "President Kane," Sokolov said with mock respect. "I'm pleased you decided to be reasonable. Let's skip the pleasantries," Marcus said. "You wanted a meeting. Here I am. What's your offer?" Sokolov circled slowly, enjoying the power dynamic. "It's simple. You give me access to your northern routes. I move my cargo through twice a month. You and your boys look the other way. In return, your nurse and her baby live peaceful lives." "Cargo," Marcus said flatly. "You mean people? People, products, what's the difference?" "It's business." Marcus felt Brick tense beside him, felt his own rage building, but he kept his voice level. "And if I say no?" Sokolov's smile vanished. "Then you'll attend a very small funeral. Probably 2, actually." The threat was clear, direct, everything Marcus had feared. "You know what your mistake was?" Marcus said quietly. "Enlighten me. You thought the only thing I cared about was protecting my family. You thought that fear would make me weak, would make me bend." Marcus took a step forward. "But you forgot something. You showed me what you are. You showed me you're the kind of animal who threatens babies to get what he wants. And there's no negotiating with that. There's only one way this ends." Sokolov's expression changed. He'd been so confident, so sure of his leverage. Now he saw something in Marcus's eyes that made him reach for his weapon. He never got it clear of his jacket. The Iron Wolves had positioned themselves perfectly. The moment Marcus gave the signal, every exit was blocked. Sokolov's men found themselves surrounded by 20 bikers, all armed, all ready. It wasn't even a fight. It was over in seconds. Sokolov was on his knees, a gun to his head, his confidence shattered. "You can't do this," he sputtered. "You kill me, my organization will come after you. After everyone you love." Marcus crouched down, looked Sokolov in the eye. "Your organization was built on fear and secrets. I've got something stronger. I've got brothers who'll protect my family with their lives. I've got a community that knows who the real monsters are. You're done, Viktor. The police are already raiding your operations. We made sure they had everything they needed. Locations, names, evidence. Your empire is burning as we speak." The look on Sokolov's face was pure disbelief. He'd been so focused on leveraging Marcus that he'd never considered the Iron Wolves might just hand him to the authorities, might use the system he'd always worked around against him. "You call yourself outlaw," Sokolov spat, "but you work with cops." "We're not outlaws," Marcus said. "We're men who live by our own code. And sometimes that means making sure justice happens, whatever form it takes. Enjoy prison, Viktor. You're going to have a lot of time to think about the difference. It should have been over." Sokolov was in custody, his operation dismantled, the threat neutralized. The Iron Wolves had won, but there was one last loose end. Sokolov's lieutenant, a vicious enforcer named Dmitri, had been in the wind during the raid. He'd escaped the net, and 3 days after Sokolov's arrest, Dmitri decided to send a message, to prove that even in defeat, they could still hurt the Iron Wolves. He went. Marcus didn't remember the ride to the safe house. One moment he was at the clubhouse. The next, he was pulling up to the mountain cabin, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might explode. Other brothers were right behind him, but Marcus didn't wait. He went through the front door like a hurricane. He found Dimitri on the stairs. The enforcer was armed, moving toward the locked bedroom where Elena and Isabella were trapped. Dimitri turned, raised his weapon. Marcus was faster. He'd been carrying his sidearm for 15 years, trained with it until it was an extension of his body. The shot was center mass, clean, definitive. Dimitri fell. Marcus took the stairs 3 at a time, his voice shaking. Elena, it's me. Open the door. The lock clicked. The door opened, and there was Elena, pale and terrified but alive, clutching Isabella to her chest. The baby was crying, a sound that had never been more beautiful. Marcus pulled them both into his arms, holding them so tight he was afraid he might hurt them. You're safe, he kept saying. You're safe. I've got you. But his hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking, because he knew how close it had been. 30 seconds. If Dimitri had been 30 seconds faster, if the guards had taken a minute longer to change shifts, if Marcus had been any farther away. That night, after the police had come and gone, after Dimitri's body had been removed and additional security had been posted, Marcus sat with Elena in the living room. Isabella was finally asleep in her carrier between them. I can't do this, Marcus said quietly. Can't do what? Can't live with this fear. Can't keep putting you two in danger because of who I am. What I am? He looked at her, his eyes haunted. Today proved it. No matter how careful I am, how many precautions I take, my life will always bring darkness to your door. Elena was quiet for a long moment. What are you saying? I'm saying I need to make a choice. A real one. I need to leave the club completely. Move you both somewhere safe, somewhere far from all of this. Start over. Marcus, no, let me finish. He was crying now, tears streaming down his face. I've been trying to have both. Trying to be Reaper and be your Marcus. But today showed me the truth. I can't protect you and be the president of the Iron Wolves. I have to choose. Elena reached across Isabella's carrier, took his hand. Then choose, she said softly. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but whatever you decide, decide with your whole heart. Don't spend the rest of your life wondering what if. Marcus called another church meeting the next morning. The brothers gathered, somber, knowing something was coming but not sure what. I'm stepping down, Marcus said without preamble. Effective immediately. Brick, you're president now. I'm handing over my patch. The room erupted, brothers shouting, demanding explanation. But Marcus stood firm. My family was almost killed yesterday, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. Because of me. Because of who I am to this club. And I realized something. I've been asking you all to accept my family, to protect them, to take on that burden. But it's not your burden. It's mine. That's what brotherhood means, Brick said. We share burdens, I know, and I love you all for it. But there's a difference between sharing a burden and making your whole life about carrying someone else's weight. Marcus looked around the room, meeting each brother's eyes. I've given 15 years to the Iron Wolves. I don't regret a single moment. You're my family. You always will be. But I have another family now. A 3-day-old daughter who almost lost her father yesterday. And she deserves more than a man who's always looking over his shoulder. Snake spoke up. You're really leaving? Just like that? Not just like that. I'll help with the transition. I'll make sure Brick has everything he needs. But yeah, I'm leaving. I'm moving Elena and Isabella to somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can be just Marcus, just a father. The silence was heavy. Then Brick stood, walked over to Marcus, pulled him into an embrace. You're a good man, Reaper. Better than most. You've earned your peace. One by one, the brothers came forward. Some angry, some sad, but all understanding. This was the code, too. Family came first. And Marcus had finally figured out which family needed him most. Marcus died 3 years later. Not in a shootout. Not in a blaze of glory. He died in a hospital bed holding Elena's hand, with Isabella asleep in a chair beside him. Pancreatic cancer. Fast, aggressive, unstoppable. The doctors gave him 6 months. He made it 8. He'd had 3 good years. Years of watching Isabella grow, of teaching her to ride a bicycle, of bedtime stories and scraped knees and all the beautiful mundane moments he'd never thought he'd have. Years of building a life with Elena far from the iron wolves, in a small town where nobody knew what he'd been. But he'd never forgotten, never stopped being grateful for those years, for the choice he'd made. In his final weeks, Marcus asked Elena to find the letter, the one he'd written before the confrontation with Sokolov. She'd never known it existed. She found it in their storage boxes, in the desk from the safe house, exactly where he'd left it. "Make sure she gets this," Marcus said weakly. "When she's old enough to understand. When she asks about me, about who I was. Give her this. Marcus, you can tell her yourself. You can—" "No," he said gently. "I won't last that long, but that's okay. I got my 3 years. I got to be her father. That's more than I deserved." Elena was crying. Isabella woke up, crawled into the bed beside her father. She was 3 now, big enough to understand that Daddy was sick, young enough not to understand what that really meant. "Tell me the story again," Isabella said, snuggling against Marcus's chest. "About the motorcycle." So Marcus told her, about his Iron Wolf's vest, about the brothers he'd loved, about the roads he'd ridden. He told her a sanitized version, a child's version, but the love in his voice was real. Isabella fell asleep listening to her father's heartbeat. Marcus looked at Elena over their daughter's head. "I made the right choice," he said. "No regrets." "No regrets," Elena echoed. Marcus died that night, peacefully, surrounded by the only family that mattered. 15 years later, Isabella Kane sat in her mother's living room, holding an envelope with her name on it. She was 18 now, about to head off to college, trying to figure out who she was and what she wanted from life. She barely remembered her father. Just fragments, the feeling of being held in strong arms, a deep voice telling stories, the smell of leather and motor oil. "He wanted you to have this," Elena said, "when you were old enough." Isabella opened the envelope with shaking hands, began to read. The letter told her everything, the truth about who her father had been, the Iron Wolves, the code he'd lived by, the violence, the darkness, the burden of leadership, but also the loyalty, the brotherhood, the belief in protecting the vulnerable. And it told her about the choice he'd made, how he'd given up everything he'd known to be her father, how she'd saved him from becoming something he couldn't live with. "You've given me something I never thought I'd have," the letter said, "a future worth fighting for, a reason to believe that maybe there's more to life than just surviving." Isabella read the letter 3 times, cried through all 3 readings. Then she looked up at her mother. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "About all of it." "Because he wanted to tell you himself," Elena said. "In his own words, in his own time." Isabella looked back down at the letter, at her father's handwriting, strong and clear. "He left them," she said.